to me there might be a novel in the story I'd been told. I was convinced I'd gotten the truth in these meetings, but I nevertheless spent the next few weeks quietly nosing around and checking the particulars. I talked with a couple of the people involved, read old files, studied transcripts, and took a trip to state police headquarters. Everything jibed. The legal limit, then, is not a literal diary of what I do as a circuit court judge. It's not quite the undertaking that has been suggested to me, but it is at its core a reasonably accurate account of lives and happenings I discovered only because of my job and wouldn't have come across otherwise. In terms of perspective and the angles I see from where I sit, this story should also give folks a taste of how it feels to make hard decisions. Stick them in a lonely black robe and situate them so they can understand how the correct answer, the right ruling, sometimes brings along its own tricks and complications. That having been said, this book is done as fiction. I cut several scenes from whole cloth. Portions of dialogue are an educated guess as to the actual conversations, and names are tweaked or rearranged in places, although my friends here in Stewart, Virginia won't have any problem deciphering who's who. A few parts are inverted, sort of written backward. Much of the small detail, however, is reproduced exactly with only a minimum of writer's gloss. I was amazed by what people could recall 2 decades removed from events. A missing section of plaster in a room, a sound, a scent, an odd phrase, even the luckless kamikaze bird that introduces the first chapter. Simply put, there are plenty of facts in these pages, but I've definitely retooled them to serve the story I wanted to tell. Finally, I suspect many people will find my choices in this matter troubling and disagree with how I determined to finish things, since my attempt at an act of conscience arguably doesn't square with the familiar black and white dictates of the law. Perhaps I made a mistake. Still, my predecessor on the bench, Frank Richardson, once advised me that a smart judge always has a little juju up his sleeve, even if the rules don't contemplate it and the parties don't see it coming. Every now and then, you're entitled to play the wild card, was how he explained it. Justice can occasionally be a fickle, blind bitch, and somebody has to keep her honest.
Part 2, Chapter 1. The shooting came in October 1984. Abrupt and rash, a quicksilver bang. The day it happened, Mason Hunt had spent most of his morning settled into the Afghan-covered recliner at his mother's house, watching a nondescript black and brown and white thrush fly against the big den window again and again as it tried to punch through the glass, the bird evidently sickly or a bona fide lunatic, remaining behind while its kin abandoned Virginia and migrated farther south. Despite the suicidal thumps and flutters that gained it nothing and left it pitifully outside its hope, the misguided bird never learned a lesson or gave up on its headlong, full-steam shortcut to sanctuary. Never stopped. Kept at the foolishness for hours. Mason was home from his final year of law school, visiting his mother and enjoying her flapjacks and rich casseroles for a weekend, waiting for his older brother Gates to arrive so they could saw up a maple tree that had blown over in the front yard and stack it into winter firewood. By the time Gates pulled in the gravel drive at 11:30, Mason had finished 2 cups of coffee, napped, read 3 issues of the Stewart Enterprise, and carted the kerosene heater from the basement to its spot near the couch, even though there was no fuel in it, and the weather wouldn't turn cold for another month or so. Soon after he heard Gates cut his Corvette's ignition, Mason noticed that the bird had quit its sallies and was stuck in a holly bush next to the window, one wing draped across a run of green, prickly leaves, its beak gapped, its head listing and its feet dangling, unable to take hold of anything. Gates opened the mudroom door but didn't move too far past the threshold, let out his neck like a terrapin leaving its armor to get a better view of Mason and his mother. "Hello, Mama," he said in a voice a few notches above normal.